What if everything you've been taught about the birth of Jesus Christ is based on a carefully constructed lie? Have you ever wondered if there's more to the story than what appears in the traditional nativity scene depicted on Christmas cards and in church pageants worldwide? The tale we've all come to accept of a baby born in a manger in Bethlehem, visited by shepherds and 3 wise men, may be far from the extraordinary truth that has been hidden from humanity for over 2,000 years. For centuries, religious authorities have presented us with a specific narrative about Jesus' birth. But what if I told you that one man, through an extraordinary gift, accessed information that completely contradicts these widely accepted beliefs? Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to discover might forever change how you understand one of history's most significant events. Edgar Cayce, often called the Sleeping Prophet, was born on March 18, 1877, in the small town of Hopkinsville, Kentucky. This humble man possessed an ability that baffled medical experts and scientists of his time. When Cayce entered a self-induced trance state, he could access dimensions of knowledge that transcended the boundaries of time and space. Over his lifetime, he produced more than 14,000 meticulously documented readings that continue to intrigue researchers worldwide to this day. But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching. From today, it's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the globe. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. Has this ever happened to you? You've believed something your entire life, only to discover compelling evidence that challenges everything you thought was true. That's precisely the journey we're embarking on today. What made Cayce truly remarkable wasn't just his unusual ability, but the uncanny accuracy of his revelations. He could diagnose complex medical conditions in people he had never met, located hundreds of miles away. He prescribed treatments unknown to conventional medicine that resulted in seemingly miraculous healings. Perhaps most astonishingly, he spoke about historical events with a level of detail that would have been impossible to know through ordinary research or education. But among all his thousands of revelations, Cayce's insights about Jesus Christ stand as the most controversial and potentially the most transformative. Through his access to what he called the Akashic records, a kind of cosmic library containing the entire history of human consciousness, Cayce didn't just add minor details to the story of Christ's birth, he completely rewrote entire chapters of this sacred narrative. But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the globe. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. The traditional story tells us of a humble birth in a manger because there was no room at the inn. But according to Cayce's revelations, the true circumstances surrounding Jesus' arrival on earth involved centuries of meticulous preparation, a secret order of spiritual scientists, and mystical dimensions of reality that the Church has deliberately kept hidden from its followers. What you're about to learn may challenge your deepest beliefs, but it might also unlock a profound new understanding of Christ's true mission on earth. If these hidden spiritual truths resonate with your soul, join our community of awakened seekers by hitting subscribe. Together, we'll continue exploring the profound mysteries that conventional religion has kept hidden for centuries. According to Cayce, his extraordinary insights didn't come from mere speculation or interpretation of existing texts. During his trance states, he claimed to access what mystics throughout history have called the Akashic records, a cosmic library existing beyond physical reality, where every thought, action, and event that has ever occurred is recorded in exquisite detail. It was through this transcendent access that Cayce obtained information about Jesus that was systematically excluded from the canonical Gospels. Approved by the early church, the revelations that emerged from these sessions paint a picture that shatters conventional understanding. The behind-the-scenes truth, according to Cayce, is that the birth of Jesus Christ wasn't simply a divine intervention that materialized out of nowhere. Rather, it represented the culmination of a hidden journey spanning centuries, a meticulously orchestrated spiritual project carried out by a secret order of enlightened beings known as the Essenes. Most historical accounts portray the Essenes as merely one of several Jewish sects existing during that period, but Cayce's revelations suggest they were far more significant, an ancient brotherhood of spiritual scientists who had preserved profound wisdom about the hidden laws governing human evolution. They understood concepts that modern science is only beginning to recognize: the epigenetic impact of consciousness on DNA, the soul's journey across multiple lifetimes, and the vibrational frequencies that connect physical reality to higher dimensions of existence. What's truly mind-blowing is the revelation that the Essenes initiated a multi-generational transformation program specifically designed to create the perfect conditions for the incarnation of the Christ consciousness. Think about the implications of this hidden truth. A group of advanced spiritual initiates working across centuries, carefully selecting family lineages and implementing precise spiritual practices to purify both the genetic and energetic qualities of their community. This wasn't random chance or divine lottery determining who would birth the Messiah. It was a sophisticated spiritual scientific endeavor involving dozens of carefully chosen families spanning multiple generations. The Essenes maintained detailed genealogical records, tracking specific qualities and characteristics that would create the optimal vessel for cosmic consciousness to enter the physical dimension. They understood that the mindset and vibrational frequency of a child's ancestors directly influence the soul that can incarnate through that lineage. The decisions made by the Essene elders weren't based on social status or wealth, but on specific spiritual qualities they could perceive in the auric field and genetic potential of each candidate. Their understanding of reincarnation wasn't abstract philosophy. It was practical knowledge they applied to identify souls who had undergone specific evolutionary experiences in previous lifetimes, making them suitable participants in this cosmic plan. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by examining how Mary herself wasn't simply a random young woman who happened to receive a divine visitation, but someone who had been prepared from before her birth for this extraordinary role. If you're finding these revelations as fascinating as I did when first discovering them, write Akashic Insight in the comments below to let me know these hidden dimensions of spiritual history resonate with you. The Essene program was far more sophisticated than most spiritual practices we're familiar with today. Their blueprint for spiritual evolution went beyond mere belief or prayer. It was a comprehensive system integrating body, mind, and spirit. Dozens of carefully chosen families participated in this multi-generational project, each playing a vital role in the collective mission. Their ultimate goal was revolutionary: to create a genetic and spiritual lineage so refined and elevated that it could serve as a pure channel for cosmic consciousness to enter our physical dimension. This revelation transforms our understanding of spiritual preparation. It wasn't about random divine selection, but conscious co-creation between humanity and higher realms. The Essenes maintained detailed records tracking spiritual qualities across generations, much like modern geneticists track inherited traits, but with an awareness of the soul's journey that modern science has yet to recognize. According to Cayce's readings, Mary's appearance in this cosmic drama wasn't coincidental. Her parents, Anna and Joachim, were highly respected members of the Essene community who had demonstrated exceptional spiritual dedication. They underwent intensive purification rituals for years before even attempting to conceive a child. These practices included specialized diets designed to purify the physical body, meditation techniques to elevate consciousness, and sacred ceremonies conducted at specific astronomical alignments to harmonize with cosmic energies. The hidden truth here reshapes our entire perception of divine intervention. It suggests a partnership between human dedication and higher purpose, not a passive waiting for miracles, but active participation in creating the conditions for spiritual breakthrough. Anna and Joachim's commitment represents a profound lesson about intention and preparation that applies to all transformative journeys. From the moment of her birth, Mary's life path was extraordinarily different from other children of her time. She was formally consecrated to the temple, marking the beginning of an intensive spiritual education unlike anything we might imagine today. Mary's daily routine included disciplines that would challenge most modern spiritual practitioners: extended periods of meditation before dawn, rigorous fasting regimens that trained the body to require minimal sustenance, and immersion in sacred texts, not just for intellectual understanding but for embodied wisdom. What's particularly fascinating about Cayce's revelations is his description of the consciousness-raising practices Mary mastered from a young age. These weren't simply religious observances, but sophisticated techniques for expanding awareness beyond ordinary perception. She learned to attune her consciousness to higher frequencies, to perceive energetic fields around living beings, and to communicate with angelic intelligences that exist beyond our normal sensory range. The impact of this preparation was profound. By the time Mary reached adolescence, she had developed spiritual capacities that most dedicated practitioners might spend lifetimes trying to attain. Her consciousness had been systematically expanded through these ancient Essene methodologies, creating the perfect vessel for the extraordinary mission ahead of her. If you're sensing that these revelations align with your own intuitive understanding about spiritual preparation, type "sacred vessel" in the comments to show that you recognize this deeper dimension of Mary's journey. Perhaps the most extraordinary aspect of Mary's preparation occurred during her adolescence, when she underwent a series of profound mystical initiations on Mount Carmel. This sacred mountain, long considered a power center by various spiritual traditions, became the backdrop for Mary's transformation from spiritual student to enlightened initiate. During these sacred ceremonies, she experienced direct visionary contact with higher dimensions of consciousness, not as abstract concepts, but as vivid, life-altering encounters that permanently expanded her perception of reality. These initiations weren't merely symbolic rituals, but doorways to authentic mystical experience. Mary was guided to enter altered states of consciousness, where she communicated directly with angelic beings, received cosmic downloads of spiritual wisdom, and glimpsed the grand blueprint of humanity's evolutionary journey. The Annunciation we know from biblical accounts was actually the culmination of years of such spiritual communion. Not a shocking surprise to a naive young woman, but the final confirmation of a mission she had been consciously preparing to accept throughout her entire life. This revelation completely reframes our understanding of Mary's role in this cosmic drama. She wasn't a passive vessel randomly selected by divine decree, but a highly evolved soul who had developed the extraordinary spiritual capacity necessary to partner consciously with the divine plan. Her yes to the angel Gabriel represented not blind faith, but informed spiritual commitment based on years of direct mystical experience. Now, let's illuminate another figure whose true identity has been dramatically distorted by traditional narratives: Joseph. The conventional portrayal of a simple carpenter thrust unexpectedly into an extraordinary situation barely scratches the surface of his actual spiritual significance. According to Cayce's readings, Joseph was in fact an Essene master of high initiatory degree, a spiritual adept who had attained profound levels of wisdom through decades of disciplined practice and inner development. The behind-the-scenes reality reveals that Joseph's selection as Mary's husband and Jesus' earthly father was no casual arrangement or cultural convenience. He was specifically chosen by the Essene leadership because he possessed the spiritual maturity and wisdom necessary to safeguard and guide both Mary and the incoming Christ consciousness during its vulnerable early years in physical form. Cayce's readings contain another detail largely erased from church teachings. Joseph was significantly older than Mary, likely in his 40s or 50s, when they were joined and had already been married before. He was a widower with children from his previous marriage, which explains the biblical references to Jesus' brothers and sisters that have often confused scholars. The Church's decision to downplay these aspects of Joseph's life was part of a broader pattern of simplifying and mythologizing the nativity narrative to make it more accessible to the masses. The authentic portrait of Joseph that emerges from Cayce's readings is of a deeply realized spiritual master who understood the cosmic significance of the mission he had accepted. He approached his role not with confusion or reluctance, but with profound reverence and committed purpose. If you're starting to see how these hidden dimensions add depth and coherence to the traditional story, type "spiritual guardians" in the comments to acknowledge this deeper understanding of Mary and Joseph's true roles. The process by which Joseph was chosen as Mary's husband transcends the simplified narratives we've inherited. According to Cayce's readings, it wasn't a mundane arrangement made by families or temple authorities, but a divine selection process accompanied by profound mystical signs. The elders of the Essene community, themselves advanced in spiritual perception, received synchronistic indications and symbolic dreams guiding them to Joseph. These weren't arbitrary coincidences, but orchestrated cosmic signposts, ensuring the right guardian would be in place for this pivotal moment in humanity's spiritual evolution. Don't miss our upcoming revelations that continue to challenge everything you thought you knew about spirituality. Subscribe now to receive notifications about new content that will further expand your consciousness and spiritual understanding. Before accepting this sacred responsibility, Joseph underwent his own series of initiatory experiences, a spiritual boot camp designed to prepare him for the unprecedented challenges ahead. These preparations included extended periods of silence and solitude in the wilderness, ceremonial purifications, and specialized breathing techniques that activated dormant capacities in his energy system. The mindset shift he experienced during this preparation was profound, expanding his perception beyond ordinary reality and opening psychic channels that would later prove crucial for protecting the Holy Family. What's particularly illuminating about Cayce's revelations is that Joseph had his own direct encounters with higher intelligences. These weren't second-hand accounts passed along by others, but personal visionary experiences where angelic beings appeared to him, outlining the cosmic significance of the events unfolding and detailing his specific responsibilities within this divine plan. The biblical account of an angel appearing to Joseph in a dream is merely a simplified glimpse of what was actually an ongoing dialogue between Joseph and higher dimensions of consciousness. From these communications, Joseph understood from the very beginning that Mary's child was not merely special in a conventional sense, but represented an unprecedented incarnation of cosmic consciousness into human form. He comprehended the metaphysical mechanics of what was occurring, how the universal Christ principle was focusing into individualized expression through the vehicle being prepared. This wasn't blind faith or reluctant acceptance on Joseph's part, but informed spiritual partnership based on direct mystical knowing. The behind-the-scenes reality reveals that Joseph's contribution to Jesus' development was far more significant than commonly understood. Cayce described his role as threefold, forming a comprehensive framework for nurturing Jesus through his formative years. First, Joseph provided essential physical protection in a dangerous world where political and religious authorities would soon seek to eliminate any threat to their power. His heightened intuition and spiritual connections enabled him to anticipate threats and guide the family to safety. Second, Joseph served as the crucial earthly father figure, teaching Jesus practical skills for navigating the material world. The carpentry training wasn't merely vocational education, but contained symbolic wisdom about the architectural principles underlying creation itself. Finally, and perhaps most significantly, Joseph continued Jesus' spiritual training in the esoteric mysteries preserved by the Essenes. He was not just a guardian, but a spiritual mentor, guiding the young Jesus through progressive initiations that awakened his extraordinary latent potential. If these revelations about Joseph's profound spiritual significance are reshaping your understanding of the nativity story, type "hidden guardian" in the comments below to acknowledge this essential yet often overlooked figure in humanity's greatest spiritual breakthrough. Now we arrive at perhaps the most controversial revelation from Cayce's readings, one that directly challenges the foundation of the traditional Christmas story we've celebrated for centuries. According to Cayce, Jesus was not born in Bethlehem as the canonical Gospels claim. The familiar narrative of a humble manger surrounded by animals, while deeply embedded in our cultural consciousness, was actually a later construction deliberately created to fulfill Old Testament prophecies about the Messiah's birthplace. This revelation creates a profound paradigm shift in how we understand the historical reality behind religious narratives. It suggests that early Christian writers engaged in a kind of spiritual marketing, retrofitting Jesus' biography to align with messianic expectations, making the revolutionary new faith more acceptable to those steeped in Jewish prophetic traditions. This insight invites us to contemplate how often spiritual truths become shaped by the politics of persuasion rather than historical accuracy. The hidden truth revealed through Cayce's access to the Akashic records is that Jesus was actually born in a sacred cave that had been meticulously prepared by the Essenes near their community on Mount Carmel. This wasn't a random location chosen out of convenience or necessity, but a site specifically selected for its unique metaphysical properties. The Essenes understood that certain places on Earth function as energetic gateways or portals, where the membrane between dimensions is naturally thinner, allowing higher frequencies to transmit more powerfully into our physical reality. This sacred birthing cave had been used for generations as a site for spiritual ceremonies and initiations precisely because of these properties. The Essenes had enhanced these natural energetics through years of focused meditation, sound practices, and sacred geometry alignments within the space. When the time came for the Christ consciousness to incarnate, this location served as the perfect interdimensional gateway, facilitating the unprecedented download of cosmic awareness into physical form. Another revelation that challenges our cultural programming concerns the actual date of Jesus' birth. According to Cayce's readings, Jesus was born in March, not December. The December 25th celebration that has become so deeply embedded in Christian tradition was actually established centuries later by the Roman Church for very pragmatic reasons. It coincided with existing pagan winter solstice festivals, making conversion of non-Christian populations much easier. This strategic co-opting of existing holy days represents a fascinating case study in how spiritual Transitions are managed across cultures. Rather than demanding complete abandonment of beloved traditions, early church fathers created bridges between the old and new by infusing existing celebration dates with fresh meaning. From a transformation perspective, this demonstrates a profound understanding of human psychology. People are more likely to embrace new paradigms when they can maintain some connection to familiar practices. The March timing of Jesus' actual birth carried its own powerful symbolism. Spring represents renewal, rebirth, and the emergence of new life, metaphorically aligning with Jesus' mission to seed a spiritual renaissance in human consciousness. If you're finding that these archaeological and historical revelations are helping you see beyond the simplified Sunday school version of this story, type "sacred truth" in the comments to show you're connecting with these deeper dimensions of the Christ narrative. Even the familiar cast of characters surrounding the nativity scene undergoes a profound reimagining through Cayce's revelations. Those simple shepherds described in Luke's Gospel, according to Cayce, they weren't ordinary herdsmen who happened to be in the right place at the right time. They were actually Essene masters who had been specifically prepared for this cosmic moment through years of disciplined spiritual practice, prophetic visions, and esoteric training. This revelation challenges us to reconsider the accessibility of spiritual breakthrough. Rather than divine revelation randomly appearing to the uninitiated, Cayce suggests that heightened perception requires deliberate preparation. These witnesses had developed the expanded consciousness necessary to recognize and correctly interpret the metaphysical significance of what was occurring. Their presence wasn't coincidental, but carefully orchestrated. They served as conscious anchors for the extraordinary energies manifesting during this interdimensional birth. Perhaps even more mind-shifting is the revelation about the famous star that supposedly guided the wise men to Bethlehem. In Cayce's readings, this wasn't a physical astronomical phenomenon that anyone with eyes could see. Rather, it was a manifestation of spiritual light, visible only to those with developed clairvoyant perception, a beacon on the inner planes rather than in the physical skies. This light phenomenon represented the unique energy signature of the Christ consciousness as it anchored into earthly dimension, a vibrational marker that could be perceived only by those attuned to higher frequencies of awareness. The so-called magi themselves were far more significant than the quaint figures portrayed in nativity scenes. They were high initiates from ancient mystery schools across multiple traditions, Persia, Egypt, India, who possessed the advanced spiritual perception needed to detect this unprecedented cosmic event. Each brought not just symbolic gifts, but specialized esoteric knowledge that would later contribute to Jesus' training during his formative years and travels. Behind these external details lies an even more revolutionary insight about the soul identity of Jesus himself. According to Cayce, the consciousness that incarnated as Jesus wasn't an ordinary soul making its first or second journey to earth. It was an extraordinarily evolved being that had developed through multiple incarnations over thousands of years, always in service to humanity's awakening and the elevation of collective consciousness. This perspective transforms our understanding of spiritual development from a single lifetime paradigm to a multi-incarnational journey of soul evolution. It suggests that mastery isn't granted through divine exception, but earned through progressive experiences across the arc of many lives. In each incarnation, this advanced soul demonstrated greater capacity for compassion, wisdom, and alignment with universal principles, building the spiritual momentum that would culminate in the full expression of Christ consciousness. The blueprint revealed through Cayce's readings shows a deliberate evolutionary trajectory, each incarnation preparing this soul for increasingly complex service and greater capacity to channel divine consciousness into human experience. This wasn't random spiritual development, but a carefully orchestrated journey guided by higher intelligence with a specific mission: to demonstrate humanity's ultimate potential for divine embodiment. If you're seeing how this evolutionary perspective adds depth to the traditional narrative of Jesus as a one-time divine intervention, type soul evolution in the comments to acknowledge this expansive understanding of spiritual development. Cayce's readings offer a detailed account of this extraordinary soul's previous incarnations, each serving as a critical milestone in its preparation for the ultimate mission as Jesus. According to these revelations, this highly evolved consciousness had previously incarnated as Adam, not the first man in a literal sense, but the first complete expression of divine human potential in our current evolutionary cycle. This soul, later embodied as Enoch, who according to ancient texts walked with God and was no more, experiencing a transformation so profound that he transcended ordinary physical death. The journey continued through an incarnation as the mysterious Melchizedek, described in Scripture as a priest-king without father or mother, without genealogy, without beginning of days or end of life. This enigmatic figure represented another quantum leap in consciousness, demonstrating a level of spiritual authority that transcended conventional religious structures. Later, this same soul incarnated as Joseph of Egypt, whose visionary abilities and compassionate wisdom saved his people from famine while forgiving those who had betrayed him. Each of these incarnations represented a specific facet of development, mastery of different aspects of human experience and spiritual capacity that would ultimately culminate in the complete demonstration of divine human potential as Jesus. This evolutionary blueprint shatters the conventional understanding of Jesus as a one-time divine exception, revealing instead a progressive journey of soul mastery across multiple lifetimes. Now, here's where Cayce's revelations become truly revolutionary for our understanding of Jesus' life. Contrary to traditional teaching, the full Christ consciousness did not fully inhabit Jesus at the moment of birth. The infant born in that sacred cave was indeed an extraordinarily advanced soul with remarkable spiritual capacity. But the complete integration of universal Christ consciousness into his human form occurred gradually, culminating in a profound spiritual activation during his baptism by John in the Jordan River at approximately age 30. This insight illuminates why Jesus' baptism marked such a pivotal milestone in his journey. It wasn't merely a symbolic ritual, but the culmination of decades of preparation, the moment when his individual consciousness achieved complete resonance with universal Christ consciousness. The descent of the dove, described in Scripture, symbolized this final integration of cosmic awareness into human form, the marriage of heaven and earth within a single being. This revelation also provides the missing key to understanding the mysterious silent years of Jesus' life, those 18 years between his childhood appearance at the temple and the beginning of his public ministry, about which the Gospels remain conspicuously silent. According to Cayce's readings, during this critical period, Jesus traveled extensively throughout the ancient world, studying with spiritual masters in the mystery schools of Egypt, meditating with yogis in India, absorbing wisdom from Zoroastrian magi in Persia, and even receiving teachings from Buddhist monks in Tibet. These weren't casual educational journeys, but intensive initiations into diverse spiritual technologies, each tradition contributing unique pieces to his developing consciousness. The wisdom traditions of these various cultures weren't seen as competing religions, but as different facets of a universal spiritual science. If this perspective on Jesus's global spiritual apprenticeship resonates with your intuition about the universality of truth beyond religious boundaries, type "one truth" in the comments to acknowledge this recognition. During these extensive travels and initiations across multiple wisdom traditions, Jesus wasn't merely accumulating intellectual knowledge or spiritual techniques. According to Cayce's revelations, he was undergoing a graduated process of consciousness expansion, systematically activating and integrating increasingly higher frequencies of awareness into his human nervous system. This wasn't an automatic process guaranteed by his advanced soul development, but required dedicated practice, disciplined focus, and progressive initiations into ever deeper mysteries. Each tradition Jesus encountered contributed unique pieces to this integration puzzle. In Egypt, he mastered the science of death and rebirth symbolized in their mystery schools. In India, he perfected the yogic technologies for awakening and channeling subtle energies through the body's chakra system. From Persian magi, he absorbed their understanding of cosmic forces and universal patterns. In Tibet, he refined techniques for maintaining complete awareness through transitions between states of consciousness. This progressive integration explains why Jesus didn't begin his public ministry until age 30. He wasn't simply waiting for some arbitrary cultural milestone of maturity. He was ensuring that his human vessel had developed the structural integrity necessary to fully channel universal consciousness without being overwhelmed by its power. The transformation process required patience, allowing his physical, emotional, and mental systems to gradually adapt to increasingly potent frequencies of divine energy. Now we encounter perhaps the most profound paradigm shift in Cayce's revelations about Jesus, a fundamental reimagining of his purpose on earth. The traditional church teaching has emphasized that Jesus came primarily to die for humanity's sins, a sacrificial lamb offered to appease divine wrath and secure salvation for believers. But according to Cayce's readings, this interpretation drastically misses the revolutionary heart of Jesus' actual mission. Christ came not as a sacrifice, but as a demonstration, a living embodiment of humanity's ultimate potential. His purpose wasn't to die for us, but to show us what we could become. Every miracle he performed, every healing he facilitated, every manifestation of mastery over physical laws wasn't meant to prove his unique divinity separate from us, but rather to demonstrate capacities latent within every human being, waiting to be awakened. This revelation completely inverts the traditional power dynamic of Christianity. Instead of positioning Jesus as fundamentally different from humanity, a divine exception sent to rescue fallen creatures, Cayce's readings reveal him as the supreme example of what evolved humanity can become. His consciousness wasn't separate from ours in kind, only in degree of awakening and integration. In this light, Jesus' miracles take on entirely new significance. They weren't supernatural violations of natural law performed to prove divine credentials. They were demonstrations of what becomes possible when a human being fully awakens to their true nature and aligns completely with universal consciousness, walking on water, multiplying loaves and fishes, healing the sick, even raising the dead. These weren't exceptions to natural law, but expressions of higher natural laws that operate from expanded states of consciousness. If Jesus' mission as a way shower of humanity's divine potential, rather than a sacrificial savior, resonates with your own spiritual intuition, type "inner crust" in the comments to acknowledge this transformative perspective. One of the most revealing statements attributed to Jesus in Scripture is his assertion that "these things that I do, you will do also, and even greater things than these." Traditional religious interpretation has often treated this as inspiring but ultimately metaphorical. Hyperbole, a nice sentiment not meant to be taken literally, but Cayce's readings reveal that Jesus was making a precise, technically accurate statement about human potential and the evolutionary trajectory of consciousness on Earth. This wasn't spiritual poetry, but a blueprint announcement. Jesus was explicitly telling his followers that the abilities he demonstrated represented the awakening of capacities latent within all humans, not supernatural powers unique to him alone. The mindset shift required to truly absorb this revelation is enormous. It transforms Jesus from an unreachable divine exception to a forerunner, demonstrating what awakened humanity can become. Jesus' incarnation served a cosmic purpose far beyond individual salvation. It anchored an entirely new frequency of consciousness into the Earth's energetic field. Before this pivotal breakthrough, the very concept that divinity and humanity could be unified in a single being was considered blasphemous heresy in most spiritual traditions. The gulf between creator and created was seen as absolute and unbridgeable. What Jesus demonstrated through his life was the revolutionary truth that this separation was an illusion, that the divine essence flows through all creation and can be fully expressed through human consciousness when properly aligned and awakened. He didn't come to worship God as something separate from himself, but to reveal that the divine presence lives within each person, waiting to be recognized and embodied. This anchoring of higher consciousness created an energetic template or pathway that all humanity could eventually follow. Like a pioneer cutting a trail through uncharted wilderness, Jesus forged an opening in collective consciousness that made it easier for others to access similar states of awareness. The veil between human and divine became permanently thinner because of his journey. Now we arrive at perhaps the most disturbing revelation from Cayce's readings: the systematic suppression and distortion of Jesus' original teachings by the institutional church. According to Cayce, what Jesus actually taught his closest disciples was far more mystical, empowering, and revolutionary than what survived in the heavily edited and politically motivated canonical Gospels that form the basis of conventional Christianity. The behind-the-scenes reality is that Jesus imparted profound esoteric wisdom about humanity's multidimensional nature, the mechanics of consciousness, and practical techniques for spiritual awakening. He taught about energy centers in the body, what Eastern traditions call chakras, the dynamics of reincarnation and soul evolution, methods for healing through directed consciousness, and the fundamental unity underlying all existence. These empowering teachings presented a direct threat to emerging church hierarchies that based their authority on positioning themselves as necessary intermediaries between humans and God. A Jesus who taught that each person could directly access divine consciousness without priestly intervention was dangerous to institutional power. Through a series of councils and edicts spanning the 4th to 6th centuries, church authorities systematically removed, altered, or reinterpreted these more radical and mystical aspects of Jesus' message. This revelation invites us to question how much of what we've inherited as Christianity actually reflects Jesus' authentic teachings versus later political constructions designed to consolidate institutional power. If you've sensed that there were deeper dimensions to Jesus' message that didn't survive in mainstream religion, type hidden teachings in the comments to acknowledge this intuitive recognition of truth beyond official doctrine. One of the most revolutionary aspects of Jesus' original teachings, according to Cayce's readings, was his explicit instruction on the reality of reincarnation and the cosmic laws of cause and effect that governs soul evolution across multiple lifetimes. When his disciples encountered a man born blind and asked, "Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents that he was born blind. They weren't posing a theological hypothetical. Their question revealed an understanding that souls could carry karmic patterns from one lifetime to another. Jesus never corrected this fundamental assumption about reincarnation. Instead, his response pointed to a higher purpose beyond simplistic karma, that this condition existed so that the works of God might be displayed in him. This insight reveals a more sophisticated understanding of reincarnation than mere punishment or reward. According to Cayce, Jesus taught that each soul chooses certain life conditions before birth to facilitate specific growth experiences and opportunities for service. The discovery that reincarnation was explicitly part of early Christian understanding creates a profound breakthrough in our spiritual paradigm. It wasn't until the Second Council of Constantinople in 553 CE, over 5 centuries after Jesus, that reincarnation was officially condemned as heresy. This decision wasn't based on spiritual insight, but on political expediency. A church that couldn't threaten eternal damnation would lose much of its power over the population. Beyond philosophical concepts, Cayce revealed that Jesus taught practical spiritual technologies, specific techniques of meditation, visualization, and energy work that enabled his disciples to access altered states of consciousness and perform the same kinds of healings and manifestations he demonstrated. He provided detailed instruction on breath control, the focusing of attention, the visualization of light, and the direction of subtle energies within and around the physical body. Jesus explained to his inner circle the multi-dimensional nature of human existence, that beyond the physical body we possess ethereal, emotional, mental, and causal bodies, each vibrating at progressively higher frequencies. He demonstrated techniques for raising what Eastern traditions call Kundalini energy through the chakra system. Though he used Aramaic and Hebrew terminology rather than Sanskrit to describe these universal human energetic structures, perhaps most transformative was Jesus' extensive teaching on what we now call the law of attraction, the principle that consciousness shapes reality, that our thoughts and emotions generate energetic frequencies that attract corresponding experiences. When he said, "Ask and it shall be given, seek and you shall find, knock and the door shall be opened," he wasn't suggesting a magical belief system, but describing precise metaphysical mechanics, the way consciousness interacts with the quantum field of potential to materialize experience. His famous statement that "the kingdom of heaven is within you" wasn't poetic metaphor, but literal instruction on where to direct awareness to access higher states of consciousness. The kingdom wasn't a future physical location or afterlife reward, but an ever-present dimension of reality accessible through specific shifts in perception and energetic alignment. This revelation completely inverts traditional religious paradigms that place divinity outside the human experience, requiring intermediaries for access. If you're recognizing how these original teachings align more closely with your own direct spiritual intuition than conventional religious doctrine, type "inner kingdom" in the comments to acknowledge this resonance with your own inner knowing. The suppression of Jesus' original teachings reveals a profound insight about power dynamics in spiritual institutions. According to Cayce's readings, these empowering teachings weren't accidentally lost to history. They were deliberately removed because they represented an existential threat to religious authority. Teachings that emphasize direct personal access to divine consciousness fundamentally undermined the power structure of institutionalized religion, which positioned priests and church hierarchies as necessary intermediaries between humans and God. The revolutionary insight here concerns the psychology of spiritual control. When individuals discover they can access divine wisdom, healing, and transformation directly through their own consciousness, they no longer depend on external authority figures to dispense salvation or divine favor. This represents a complete paradigm shift in the spiritual power dynamic, from hierarchical dependence to sovereign spiritual autonomy. The first 3 centuries after Jesus' death actually witnessed remarkable diversity in Christian expression. Dozens of different groups existed, each with their own gospels, interpretations, and practices based on various aspects of Jesus' teachings. Among these early Christians, the Gnostics most faithfully preserved the mystical and esoteric dimensions of Jesus' message. Their very name derived from gnosis, direct experiential knowledge of the divine, rather than belief based on external authority. Gnostic Christianity emphasized personal revelation through meditation, vision quests, and initiation practices. Their Gospels, like the Gospel of Thomas, Gospel of Mary Magdalene, and Gospel of Philip, contained teachings strikingly different from what would later become Orthodox doctrine. These texts emphasized the divine spark within each person, the illusory nature of physical reality, and the path of direct enlightenment through inner transformation rather than external salvation. The catalyst for Christianity's fundamental reframing came when Emperor Constantine made it Rome's official religion in the early 4th century. What had been a diverse spiritual movement suddenly became a political asset requiring standardization. At the Council of Nicaea in 325 CE and subsequent councils, decisions about Christian doctrine were made as much for political expediency as spiritual authenticity. Gospels were selected or rejected, doctrines established or condemned, often by narrow votes among bishops with political agendas. The final nail in the coffin for Jesus' original teachings on reincarnation came at the Second Council of Constantinople in 553 CE, where the concept was officially anathematized as heresy. The backstory to this decision reveals the true motivation. Emperor Justinian pressured the reluctant Pope Vigilius to condemn Origen's teachings on pre-existence of souls and reincarnation because these concepts undermined the Church's ultimate control mechanism, the fear of eternal damnation. The strategic calculation was simple yet profound. A spiritual system teaching that souls have multiple lifetimes to evolve and learn creates a fundamentally different psychological relationship to divine authority than one teaching a single lifetime followed by permanent heaven or hell. A church that couldn't threaten eternal torment for disobedience in this one and only lifetime would lose much of its leverage over the population's behavior and beliefs. What had been liberating teachings about humanity's divine potential were systematically transformed into doctrines emphasizing human unworthiness, original sin, and complete dependence on church authority for salvation. If this revelation about the political manipulation behind religious doctrine is connecting dots for you about why institutional religion often feels disconnected from authentic spirituality, type spiritual freedom in the comments to acknowledge your recognition of this pattern. Now, we arrive at what may be Edgar Cayce's most expansive revelation about the Christ, one that completely transcends traditional religious boundaries and connects directly with the most advanced understandings in quantum physics and consciousness studies. According to Cayce's readings, Christ consciousness is not limited to planet Earth or even to the human species. It exists throughout the cosmos, in all dimensions and in all forms of conscious life, a universal principle of evolved awareness that pervades the entire created universe. This revelation elevates our understanding from the personal to the cosmic. The incarnation of Jesus wasn't merely an important event for humanity, but a breakthrough moment that reverberated across multiple dimensions of reality. When Jesus demonstrated complete mastery over physical laws through his resurrection, showing that consciousness ultimately transcends material limitation, he didn't just create a pathway for human evolution. He actually raised the vibratory frequency of the entire planet and influenced the evolution of consciousness on other planes of existence. The cosmic ripple effect of this achievement can't be overstated. Cayce described hierarchies of evolved beings in higher dimensions who closely monitored Jesus' mission on Earth. For these cosmic intelligences, what Jesus accomplished, integrating full divine consciousness into dense physical form on a planet characterized by strong polarity between light and dark, represented an extraordinary achievement, even by universal standards. The blueprint he established created new possibilities not just for humanity, but for conscious evolution throughout the cosmos. Even more revolutionary is the revelation that Jesus' work didn't end with his ascension 2,000 years ago. The historical person fulfilled his specific mission, but the Christ as a universal principle of consciousness remains eternally available and active. According to Cayce, this consciousness continues working with humanity, not externally as some distant deity requiring worship, but internally, within the heart and awareness of each person who opens to this frequency. This insight completely transforms our relationship with the divine from external supplication to internal recognition. The Christ isn't somewhere out there waiting to be appeased or persuaded to help us. It's a living presence within our own deeper awareness, accessible through meditation, compassionate action, and the alignment of our personal will with universal principles. The journey becomes one of remembering and embodying what already exists within us, rather than seeking salvation from beyond. This understanding revolutionizes the traditional concept of the second coming of Christ. Cayce's readings reveal that this return won't be an external apocalyptic event, where a figure literally descends from the clouds to judge humanity. The authentic return of Christ is the progressive awakening of Christ consciousness within each human being, a transformation of awareness that occurs internally as more and more people recognize and activate their divine potential. This isn't some distant future event, but a process already underway. We've entered an era of accelerated spiritual awakening, where old structures based on fear, control, and separation are breaking down, making way for new forms of living based on love, cooperation, and recognition of our fundamental unity. This transformation isn't happening without challenge. The birth of new consciousness is accompanied by the dissolution of outdated patterns, creating both opportunity and turbulence. The most essential insight from all these revelations is that this knowledge isn't meant to be merely intellectual entertainment, but a catalyst for personal transformation. If studying Cayce's revelations doesn't change how you live, you've missed their purpose. The invitation is to recognize your own divine nature, take full responsibility for your spiritual journey, apply the universal principles Jesus demonstrated, and share these liberating truths with discernment. If you sense that these revelations are awakening something within your own consciousness beyond intellectual curiosity, type "awakening now" in the comments to acknowledge this recognition of your own divine potential. As we reach the end of this exploration into Edgar Cayce's extraordinary revelations about Jesus, I'm struck by how these hidden truths continue to resonate across time, speaking directly to that part of us that instinctively recognizes deeper spiritual realities beyond conventional religious narratives. These aren't merely interesting historical corrections, but invitations to a profound reimagining of our own spiritual potential. The journey we've taken together through these revelations isn't meant to end with this video. The true purpose of uncovering these hidden dimensions of Jesus' birth and teachings is to inspire your own spiritual awakening, to recognize that the same divine potential demonstrated by Jesus exists within you, waiting to be activated and expressed. If you've found value in these insights and want to continue exploring the deeper dimensions of spiritual truth, I invite you to join our community of seekers by subscribing to this channel. Each week, we delve into similar, hidden knowledge that empowers your personal transformation and expands your understanding of reality's true nature. If these revelations have sparked something within you, a recognition, a remembering, or simply a curiosity to explore further, I'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment with the phrase, "divine remembering," to let me know these insights have reached fertile ground in your consciousness. Your engagement creates a field of shared awareness that strengthens everyone connected to this exploration. Your support through a simple like on this video helps these alternative perspectives on spiritual truth reach others who are ready for a more expansive understanding of humanity's divine potential. Each engagement extends the ripple effect of consciousness transformation that begins with reclaiming these hidden truths. For those ready to continue this journey of spiritual discovery, there's a video right here that explores Cayce's revelations about the true purpose of dreams and how they connect us to higher dimensions of consciousness. Click and join me there as we uncover another layer of your multidimensional nature and the tools for conscious evolution that have been hidden in plain sight throughout human history.